Israel's just bombing Lebanon again. Oh yeah, also they built a wall. Israel's building a wall.
Now, another IDF bombing hit the Ain al-Hilwe refugee camp on the outskirts of the coastal city of Sidon. Now, this is a Palestinian refugee camp, and Hamas fighters and representatives are also present in the area, and they've called Israelis' bombings a message of intimidation for the Palestinian people.
It is a message of intimidation to our Palestinian people in the Palestinian camps, meant to produce political outcomes. It is one of many forms of pressure that our Palestinian people are being subjected to.
The deadliest bombings in Lebanon since a year of ceasefire have ripped through makeshift tents, a building and several cars in the area. Now, the Israeli bombings have come just days after images showed the workers on the Israeli side of the border with Lebanon constructing a concrete wall, which Lebanon says extends beyond the agreed-upon blue line. The blue line is the United Nations mapped line which demarcates Lebanon from Israel and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The IDF had withdrawn to the blue line back in 2000. The latest contention between Israel and Lebanon has now reached the United Nations, with Israeli officials denying accusations by their Lebanese counterpart of defying an agreed-upon boundary.
They're just building another wall on the northern side of Israel. Kind of like the wall that they built around Gaza. A real piece of work, man. Yeah, what else are these guys up to? Iran is constructing drones on Venezuelan soil for Venezuela's use. They are doing this for economic and political benefits, strengthening Venezuela's dependence on Iran.
You said that Iran is constructing drones on Venezuelan soil. Who are those drones, very briefly, who are these drones intended for? Are they going to be shipped back to Iran, or are they for Venezuela to use against whoever they want?
They're for Venezuela to use. Now, Iran has joint ventures with multiple countries on drones. We know the Venezuelan one, right? They are giving their prototypes, and the Venezuelan are building those prototypes, of course, paying.
Oh yeah, this is I-24 news from Israel, right?
For Iran in gold or whatever. Second, we see the same thing in Tajikistan. The Iranians and the Tajikis have the same factory. And last but not least, the joint factory of the Russians and the Iranians in Tatarstan, where the
Iran and Shiite Axis Program, a senior researcher. Venezuela actually is part of the axis of evil from Iran.
One actually is the Shaheds. The Iranians type, they're calling them a Russian name, they be used, unfortunately, in the war against Ukraine. So those joint ventures are important for Iran because in general terms, we have to say that the Iranians are exporting their capabilities like we see now, for example, in Sudan, in order to not only for the economical benefits, but also for the political one. Take, for example, Venezuela. You're selling the prototypes, the drones, and actually you are strengthening the dependence of the Venezuela in Iran. This is one aspect. Same thing goes to the Russians, but also in Sudan. Why the Iranians are doing so? Not because of the money they can get from Burhan, the commander of Sudanese army, because they're using that in order to increase their foothold in Sudan itself. So those developments are extremely alarming, and we have to think how we can counter preventing Iran from becoming a big weapon exporter in the world.
Oh my God. Yeah, we have to connect all the dots. Here's Machado. I'm told Marco Rubio has also made an absurd argument directly to Trump that Maduro helped the Dems steal 2020. See, also Maduro is probably in the Epstein files.
Do you think part of President Trump's interest is linked to his beliefs around the 2020 election and the allegation that voting machines and people close to Maduro's circle were involved in the election that he wrongly believes was stolen from him in 2020?
Well, on the first hand, I have no doubt that Nicolás Maduro, Jorge Rodriguez, and many others are, the masterminds of a system that has rigged elections in many countries, including the US. I have no doubt about that. And they are totally involved in wrongdoing in many countries. And there is currently an investigation going on in the United States and in other countries as well. I have no idea if that has or not any influence in President Trump's decision, but I will tell you something. A transition to democracy in Venezuela will not only bring security to the region, stability to the region, it will ensure energy security for the US and other countries because of Venezuela has huge potential. Will turn our country from the criminal hub of the Americas into the energy hub of the Americas, the technology hub of Americas, because we will have cheap, reliable electricity in amounts that no other country can produce right now in the region. But most important of
You know
all,
what freaks me out about her face is she doesn't have any lips, so she draws them up higher.
We will bring a country, a nation back together.
That's what's scary. But anyways, yeah, a bunch of bullshit. If she's in charge, the sanctions will stop. Oh yeah. Because the United States would get all the oil. But yeah, she's trying to say that basically Venezuela rigged the 2020 election, essentially, right? Because anything to get on Trump's good side, right? So she wants to be the person to lead the color revolution here. Yeah, all right, I'm getting kind of mixed up here. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, so okay, hold on. How long was this?
Legitimized the Jamaat-e-Islami, which was banned by Sheikh Hasina.
Okay.
They've not fully legitimized it.
And the coverage up here in the United States has been look at Gen Z, look at the youth. They're angry at the cartels, they're angry at corruption, they're angry.
So this is talking about Mexico, right?
And they're rising up against the tyranny of Claudia Sheinbaum. So you went there yourself. I did want to put up one funny image that did circulate and kind of cut through this a little bit, and then I want to get your reaction here. Here is the one of the funniest images I've ever seen from a protest. There's the One Piece symbol, which you saw in South Korea.
The Gen Z protest with former President Vicente Fox.
Gen Z resistance.
Hello, fellow kids.
If this Vicente Fox here thinks people won't recognize him in his shades and hat if he dons a One Piece hat.
He's claiming that's not him. He's saying that's not him, but it sure does look like that.
Yeah, we have that.
I'll give him.
Okay, we have that animated emote. On
he's
this
not
channel.
doing a very good Gen Z impersonation.
I think it's a free one.
So in any event, what did you see when you went to these protests, and how do they compare to other kind of protests that you've seen against other governments?
Yeah, in your lead up, I think you hit the nail on the head. Very much their intention was to transmit this message that Mexico, like other countries here in Latin America that are experiencing a profound political process of change, obviously with the election of López Obrador in 2018, kind of the first left-wing government in Mexico in a very long time, arguably since the 30s. And then, he very much was putting himself forward as a transformational candidate. Things have, really changed here in Mexico, and the opposition has struggled to try to respond to that. They haven't really ever kind of found footing in this new political reality in Mexico. And I think the election results of 2024 also speak to that Claudia Sheinbaum not only builds on López Obrador's legacy, but actually expands his coalition, wins by an even larger margin, just an overwhelming landslide win. And so what we've seen from the opposition are these attempts to try to kind of latch on to other issues because their own brand, for lack of a better word, just has no currency anymore. They're very much discredited, the parties of the old regime here in Mexico. And we saw it around election mobilizations, around the Electoral Authority, the INE, but we also saw it with this most recent demonstration. So it's important to give that context because this all actually started back in October. There was this AI generated video, this very much AstroTurf. I love that term. I love that we can use it in English. I wish we had an equivalent in Spanish. But this AstroTurf campaign, fake grassroots, where
you don't have AstroTurf in Mexico?
We do, but the term doesn't have the same kind of meaning there. Yeah, and soccer is the bigger sport here. They play on natural grass as
they play soccer on natural grass.
That turf that destroyed.
Fun fact: when these soccer teams, football teams, travel the world to play exhibition matches, and they play exhibition matches in the United States, like in a big stadium, like in a big like NFL football stadium. If that NFL football stadium has artificial turf, AstroTurf, they will replace that and temporarily install actual grass for them to play on. And then once that exhibition match is done, they'll remove the grass and put back the artificial turf. Because those matches bring in tons of money, and also it's very well known that fake grass, like as in the turf that they use in some stadiums, is more commonly known to like break somebody's ankle or twist a leg or something.
Play soccer on AstroTurf, and
it's
we
awful.
Give all the players cancer. But go ahead.
And so this AstroTurf campaign starts to make some noise, and it turns out
I'm sure MLS had people playing on AstroTurf and they got injured. I guarantee you.
Some other journalists did some digging in, and like the websites were registered to former operatives associated with the PRI. They were all following social media accounts that were very much linked with the sort of NGO opposition, but also the formal political opposition here. And
US-funded NGOs, or
they're mostly oligarch funded here in Mexico. Okay. This is I know that there's been a lot of talk about foreign interference, and there certainly has been. I think we've seen actors from the international right active, actually even coming here in Mexico to participate in these protests. But these are very much local oligarchs, Mexican oligarchs, who are funding this. Claudio X González, Ricardo Salinas Pliego, who are kind of the big enemies right now of the Fourth Transformation, the name of the movement that López Obrador started and Claudia Sheinbaum also represents. And so things really start to change, though, in November when Carlos Manso, so he is this mayor from Uruapan, Michoacán. Michoacán is one of those states that has been heavily impacted by organized crime. It was the state where Felipe Calderón, way back in 2006, launched his so-called war on the cartels. It's one of the states most affected. It's also one of the poorest. And Uruapan is, of course, no exception inside of Michoacán. And he had a hard line. So his position was, we have to go after the cartels with everything, kind of echoing some of the similar language of Felipe Calderón, of a very militarized, aggressive, security first kind of approach, although he was also critical of Felipe Calderón. And because of that, it's believed now, it's widely understood that he was targeted by organized crime groups in that region because of his opposition to them. And I think some of the outrage we've seen around this, because of course security is a major issue here in Mexico. It's one of those that, there has been progress, but it's still a major issue, especially things around kind of that affect quality of life, the extortions and the kind of racketeering that happens here in Mexico. Less so the kind of the more violent crimes. Those are the ones where we've seen actually a really important improvement. And so what we saw was the opposition, both the NGO and the political opposition, latch onto this, as they did with the electoral.
He was assassinated, correct?
He was assassinated by organized crime.
Real quickly, what were the circumstances?
So he was at a Day of the Dead event, a very public event. The details are still not quite clear. He did have protection from the National Guard, which is this federal security force that López Obrador created. He dissolved the former corrupt federal police, creates the National Guard, and he did have some protection from them. But according to the reports from the Attorney General here in Mexico, the National Guard was assigned to kind of periphery duty, and his closest contacts, his bodyguards, were of his people he trusted individually. And there's video of the scene right before it happens. There's an actual video of the actual assassination, but you can see that his security guards are not necessarily around him, protecting him. And it looks like it was actually a very young person, a 17-year-old, who actually was paid to carry out this. Of course, here in Mexico, it's kind of easy in a way to pay somebody to kill somebody. Right. The interesting thing is always who was the intellectual author, who was the mastermind behind this. And of course, it produced a very sincere, and I think it's it's important to say this, outrage. It is an example of what happens when organized crime makes the decision to carry out a political assassination. It'd be interesting to see, again, if there are other actors involved there, but that is kind of the line of investigation that the state is operating under. But then this Gen Z transformation, which at first was about calling for a revocation of mandate. We have here in Mexico at the middle of a president's term, you can actually hold a referendum and try to recall them. They were pushing for this, but as soon as this assassination happens, then it becomes about the security situation. And we saw, a huge mobilization from the political opposition, from the NGO opposition here to try to make noise about it, which is within their right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But this notion that it is a Gen Z protest, organic, that's, emerged from online discussions of a generation, of a part of the population, a segment of the population that is upset with the president and therefore feels like this is the only option available to them, that part is totally artificial. There is discontent. There is obviously a political opposition, but
did know that about Mexican politics?
All of this kind of narrative that Mexico is, in a crisis and, they've been overwhelmed by organized crime and the population is upset with an unpopular government is a total fabrication. Claudia Sheinbaum remains immensely popular. She has above 70%, almost 80% approval, and amongst young people with above 60%.
That's much higher than what Trump has.
To 70% amongst
did not know that.
30 approximately. So it gives you an idea of what conditions actually are on the ground. And I think what we saw on Saturday, kind of get into the details of the actual clash.
I mean, to what he's speaking about, though, like, for a younger generation to try and pin it and say that it's the younger generation, Gen Z, that's like rioting or revolting or whatever. That's a good narrative because you're growing up and you're seeing the violence that is caused by cartels and specifically the assassination that that has sparked this, or that they're trying to use to spark this, like fake color revolution, whatnot. The cartels have been around for like way too long. There is a lot of cartel violence, yes. But as much as Mexico, hand in hand with the U.S. military, actively tries to fight the cartels, somehow the cartels keep getting American weapons. That's kind of weird. I wonder how that's happening.
That we saw inside of the Zócalo, the big public square here in Mexico City, I think they were very much meant to happen. It was their objective to see these kinds of scenes precisely. So you get comments like from Donald Trump that we saw yesterday. Oh, I saw what's going on and things are not so good down in Mexico. It's all about trying to install this narrative that Mexico is run by a narco state, and it responds to the political demands of the opposition here, which having nothing left in their hands to actually kind of be able to confront this government is now trying to destabilize it.
Like manufacture a destabilization. We want to get to those scenes in a second, but so you and your colleagues were at the protests, and oh Christ, I can't get this.
I'm watching Ryan's stream on my stream. Streamception.
¿Preferías a Donald Trump presidente de México
and you interviewed some of these young people.
Sí.
Oh, sorry if you guys don't speak Spanish.
De México
and you interviewed.
They're asking them how popular you think Sheinbaum is, like, and basically if she's doing a good job.
So young.
They said, "What do you think about Donald Trump? He's doing a great job."
¿Qué le parece sobre la militarización de los Estados Unidos?
What do you think about the militarization of the United States?
Pues que también igual, si estuviera aquí como el país, tampoco no estaría bien.
He said, hold on, what did she say?
Pues que también igual, si estuviera aquí como el país, tampoco no estaría bien.
Well,
said it's just like here, where we would not be the same.
He has good things and other things that we are not. What would you say?
This is Gen Z, by the way. I don't. Does it mean like, in other countries, like when you're in first place, you're actually in last place technically. As far as the numbers go, you would need to be the opposite. So maybe that's what maybe we lost that in translation. It's amazing how they're saying words, but absolutely nothing at all true.
Some of the good things are. Well, he protects the life. I mean, the newborn. Okay.
Abortion.
Oh yeah, she's anti-abortion. Okay.
Abortion. He's against abortion. Okay. De Donald Trump. A mí me
Another Gen Z protester right here.
parece un buen presidente. A lo mejor no
He's a good president.
es lo mejor que hay.
So maybe he's not the best.
Sin embargo,
But he's
si
the best
hubiera
again.
quedado Kamala, yo creo que la situación sería peor porque Kamala
The situation would have been worse because Kamala.
junto con Biden son algo muy parecido a lo que es López Obrador. Y por eso
They would have. She said that Biden and Kamala were AMLO.
se permitieron muchas cosas en Estados Unidos. La llegada de muchos emigrantes, muchos narcos hay allá.
Do they have Fox? Well, I guess they have Telemundo, which is like the Fox News of Mexico.
Y todo fue por la complicidad de Biden con López Obrador, con el gobierno de Morena. Por eso se invadieron de narcos y de delincuentes.
The drug traffickers did not exist before Biden took office. And then somehow, as soon as Biden took office, everybody, all the drugs started, it just started up again because, who was president before that? I don't know.
All right, so when you're looking around the protest square,
Gen
first of
Z,
all,
though,
how
Gen
big
Z
was it
protest.
compared to what people were claiming, and what kind of types of people are you seeing as someone who's covered a bunch of these different protests? A lot of usual suspects or some surprising elements?
I think it's very much a lot of the usual suspects. You can see even just by that clip, right? The sort of the class and white composition of this, which is very much middle class, upper class, the kind of usual political opposition to López Obrador, to Claudia Sheinbaum, and they have successfully demonstrated in large numbers before. The term that was used here to kind of represent them was the pink tide, the Marea Rosa. This was all around the protests against changes to the electoral.
Mexico is imploding. You couldn't even fill the plaza.
Demonstrations that they held in 2023.
This was it. This was as many people as they could get in there.
Political opposition is actually smaller. The amount of people that turned out on Saturday was far less compared to that. And you can actually see it because, you can always measure by how much the Zócalo actually.
This is like a regular weekday, man.
Quite packed, and it wasn't even half full. And also the images from on the ground, seeing from the protests, you can see that it wasn't as full as usual. So much so that we've actually seen a lot of the people who have been, trying to instrumentalize these protests using images from a zombie walk. That
more people turned out for the Pope reveal, right?
Claim it was this demonstration, trying to give a false image of how large it was. Was there a turnout? Sure. I mean, absolutely. There is a part of this population which is carries forward that tradition of marching out into the streets and showing their opposition, right? But I think it's very much some of those
Mexico
usual
is
suspects,
exploding,
especially the first bit. So this started in the Zócalo and then marched down Paseo de la Reforma, the Ángel de Independencia, the Angel. Anybody who's been to Mexico City is probably familiar with it. Down the big avenue, Paseo de la Reforma, trying to make it to the Zócalo there. And that first march, I think, was very much what you would expect to see from the traditional opposition here.
When I went to Mexico City, I remember I was walking around, right? And I was like, oh, I'll go check out the plaza. And so, I went to go check out the plaza by myself. It's pretty big, as you can see, in this image here. Pretty cool place to go to. You can walk through this church over here. Church was really cool. And then I heard a ton of music, and I was like, why is that so loud? I just kept walking towards where I could hear the music, and it was further off. I think it was off this way. Yeah, this way to the left. And when I turned the corner, I saw this park, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll go walk to the park and try to get on higher ground, try and figure out what's going on. And then I turned around, and there was this huge protest of all these mostly naked people, and they were I don't know what they were protesting, but there was more naked people than were people here in this plaza. And I think they were protesting for rights of some sort. But anyways, that happened. And like they like Mexico, and I was like asking my friend there, I was like, I saw this protest, and they're like, oh yeah, people love protesting here. It's like a, it's an occurrence, it's a thing that a lot of people will participate in. So it balled out, literally balled out. I think people kept their pants on. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, they love protesting. For the people not to turn out, for it to be like maybe a few hundred people at most, that's kind of sad. Honestly, that's a sad ass protest. That's nothing. That is literally nothing for an area that is known for protesting, for holding massive protests.
The usual slogans and expressing their discontent. Some political faces that are well known to Mexicans were there. But then it's the scene in the Zócalo where things seems to change, right? And I think there's an important thing to point out there, which is that in any demonstration in Mexico, at the end point, there's usually a stage and there's usually a speaker. There's an attempt to give a kind of political character, political content to the demonstration.
Right.
That didn't happen this year, despite the heavy.
Yeah, that's basically what happened.
Demobilization that some of these.
That's what happened in the protest that I was there. They had like this huge screen, and they were showing like the people on the giant screen.
And I think that was very much intentional. They were trying to set the table, trying to create this scene, because the images that have been circulating on social media that we've seen of these clashes between the provocateurs, between these shock groups and the police, they were already on site. They were already there in the Zócalo, and it just kind of seemed like all of the ingredients were in place precisely to produce these kinds of scenes. And some of those older actors that we've already seen before, talking about the head of Frente Cívico,
he didn't do enough research.
Naranjo, for example, all of them disappeared. There was a TV station here, TV Azteca, which is owned by Ricardo Salinas Pliegos, which has a lot of issues with the Mexican government. He was all out, right? All day coverage, round the clock, sending his star reporters there with bodyguards to cover this demonstration. And then as soon as the scene starts to get more conflictive, those people all disappeared. They all kind of left the area. And I think that is quite telling, because they were trying to set up this scenario precisely that we ended up seeing play out.
Yeah. So what were we looking at on the scenes that I was playing? And I'll play another one while we're responding. Like how significant were these? How many people are involved, and did they end up kind of breaching anything, or was it more just kind of for drama for the sake of drama?
So what we saw in the actual square,
there's another one-piece flag.
These images here. So the National Palace is the seat of government. It's like the White House, but it's literally on a public square. So it's quite easy to get close to in normal times. When there's obviously demonstrations where there's intelligence that suggests that these kinds of incidents are going to happen, what the state does is put up these metal fences.
Yeah, this looks like a huge J6, but if you look at it from this image over here, it's like hardly anything happened.
Saws to try to cut the pieces that kind of hold it all together. They brought chains and ropes. There's clearly a coordinated strategy to try to bring down these fences, because the point was to try to repeat some of the scenes that we did see from places like Nepal, where these kind of one-piece flags are drawing inspiration from, to actually storm the National Palace, which again is the seat of the federal executive, to burn it down, to try to send this message. And so when we started seeing these agitators start to kind of attack and break things down, there was something really interesting there that I think is worth highlighting here, which is that these kinds of...
I just wanted to show that like the revolution that is going on in Mexico, and like the big J6 experience of Mexico City, it was nothing. It's literally nothing. It seems like, just like the classy nerd said here, the CIA didn't do enough research. Like they didn't really stick to it. They didn't find out, what you're supposed to do before and after these things. The propaganda doesn't work every time. Speaking of the propaganda, sorry. Here is Sarika Hurwitz, former Obama aide, thinks it's a mistake to teach Americans that genocide is bad.
And, I think, unfortunately, the very smart, bet that we made on Holocaust education to serve as anti-Semitism education in this new media environment, I think that is beginning to break down a little bit because, Holocaust education is absolutely essential. But I think it may be confusing some of our young people about anti-Semitism because they learn about big, strong Nazis hurting weak, emaciated Jews. And they think, oh, anti-Semitism is like...
The CIA really, not really known for their what? Stick-utiveness? Are you making up words?
Like anti-black racism, right? Powerful white people against powerless black people. So when on TikTok all day long they see powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the less...
Powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians. Why are they weak and skinny?
So when on TikTok all day long they see powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight Israel. You fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people.
Yes. Yes. That also, why are the powerful Israelis hurting the weak Palestinians? That probably is a question that should be answered. I showed my partner this, and she this clip, and she was like, "What does that even mean?" She is upset that on the TikTok we're seeing what Israel is doing, and that's bad. Actually, we shouldn't be seeing what Israel is doing, because then people get ideas that what Israel is doing is bad because they're doing bad stuff. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is that we're able to see it. That is the real bad part. Yeah, I think Yellow Parenti had something on this. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, Yellow Parenti has something on imperialism here. I don't remember why I put this in here, but I'm sure it'll be educational.
Foreign aid, and as someone once said, foreign aid is when the poor people, that's us, of a rich country, give money to the rich people of a poor country. You can see when you get brilliant people like Kenneth Boulding speaking so naively, you can see the troubles you get into, the swamps you go into, the baby talk, silliness you get into when you think without Marx, when you think without class analysis. And Kenneth Boulding says, one of America's leading economists, he says, empire is irrational because it costs more than what we get out of it.
Yeah, we're doing empire, we're doing imperialism as a favor to the poors of that country. Don't they know that it costs us, the empire, more money than we get out of the exchange? Don't they understand that? And we're doing them a favor.
The British, it cost them more in India than what they got out of it. The American investment in the Philippines is only about $3.5 billion, but we had to give them about $6 billion in aid. It costs us more than what we get out of it. And that's when you think without a class analysis. Because as we know, as you're going to know before the evening's over, that it's very profitable. Because the people who have the $3 billion investment aren't the same ones as the people who paid the $6 billion. As Thorsten Veblen said back in 1909, and Boulding should have read him even if he is a Marxist, as Veblen said, the wealth that's extracted from imperialism goes into the coffers of the select few, whereas the costs of empire are paid out of the common treasure of the people. And so it was with the British Empire in India.
The empire is socialized. The profits are privatized.
It was the Brits, the ordinary working people, who paid for the cost of empire. It was the Bank of England and the East India Trading Company that got the cream. The economist Ray Brown, when he went to Cuba before the revolution, it was in 1958, he was there about a year or so before, was impressed by how every major road he saw went from a sugar plantation to a refinery to the seaport. While there were whole communities without roads that couldn't get to doctors,
You know. So this is like always. I always go back to the argument that people say that they don't want to pay taxes, right? Like, so if you didn't pay taxes, who would make the fucking roads? And this answers that question of who would make the roads, because the only reason that they would make roads would be for profit, right? Because roads would be privatized at that point since they're not socially funded by taxes. So we get to drive on the roads because we paid for the roads, right? In the United States, paid for them with your taxes. Otherwise, do you think your job would build a road for you to go to work? No. That's not the way. That wouldn't be profitable, right? So we have to socialize the roads. We have to do taxes so that we can build roads for people to commute. Otherwise, the roads would just go from the exploited to the exploiter.
He was there about a year or so before, was impressed by how every major road he saw went from a sugar plantation to a refinery to the seaport. While there were whole communities without roads, that couldn't get to doctors, that couldn't have schools, couldn't see a priest, the sugar companies had their roads. And when you send foreign aid to those countries, 9 out of 10 of those dollars goes to build the infrastructure, to subsidize the capital investment of the private corporations, or to pay for the police and the army of that country, not to defend it from foreign invasion, because Uruguay is not going to invade Bolivia, because Taiwan isn't going to be invaded by the Philippines. But they need those big armies to defend their rulers from their own people, because those people are in such a state of immiseration. So that's where our foreign aid goes. And as someone once said...
Yep. Foreign aid goes to the rich in the other countries. All right, where am I at? Who's in here? Oh man, do I want to talk more about Trump? All right, public media. Yes, where I'm at. Service announcements now. I have to do private service announcements?
That they